Alright guys, welcome back to Video Game Leaks. So the PlayStation 5 has been a pretty massive success for Sony. While exact numbers are hard to come by, Sony has claimed they have moved over 20 million units in the 2022 fiscal year. From the consumer's perspective, things are a little less clear though. Chip shortages and other supply chain issues during the global situation made console production far less than previous generations, resulting in extremely high resale prices as every new console to hit the market got scooped up by someone looking to profit. So even though the market price was $500, people were paying more than double that to get their hands on the first year or so of the PS5's life cycle. While many people say they prefer the PS5 to the Xbox Series X, there are still a great number of PlayStation fans who have been unable to get a PS5 at market price. And while the problem is getting slightly better, it's still very much alive. This is where Microsoft has really capitalized. Their budget system, the Xbox Series S, is a very affordable alternative to the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and since it's been less demanding machine for Microsoft to produce, it's been more or less readily available since the new console generation began. Despite the Series S being a much weaker than the competition, it's been selling extremely well simply because it's the easiest console to get your hands on if you're looking to play the most recent AAA games. Sony obviously needs to crank up their console output if they want to really dominate the generation, but just the other day, a reliable source released a massive leak suggesting that Sony is going to amp up their production, but they're going to introduce a new model much earlier than expected. It's not a new practice for consoles to get multiple variants over the years. I remember back in the Nintendo 64 days when Nintendo tried to sell the expansion pass thing that only a handful of people actually bought, but after that the PS2 had a couple different versions, including a very popular slim version known as the PS2 Slim. This really kicked off Sony's tradition of slimming down their consoles and selling them a second time, but I can't really blame them for all that. It's a great business strategy and gives the consumers more options, which is always a good thing. The PlayStation 3 thankfully got a slim version, which was a huge improvement since many of you probably remember how insanely loud and large the PS3 system was. Its large size and heavy fan usage made a smaller, quieter version more appealing and carried that over into the next generation as well. The launch version of the PS4 sounded like a freaking jet engine, and it was almost a meme in the gaming community. When a slim version of the PS4 was announced, it was like a dream come true. The PS4 was already outselling the Xbox One about 3-1 to that point, but once the new version was introduced, that gap got even bigger. Microsoft actually managed to make up a bit of a comeback a few years later with their own budget option, the Xbox One S. Say what you will about the Xbox One and the Xbox One S, the One S was actually an excellent system. It had vastly improved the performance from the original version, but it was also a much smaller and way quieter. And the best part, it was only $300, making it the cheapest option on the market. Microsoft is the expert of the whole family of consoles thing, which they first really established with all of the different versions of the Xbox 360. There was the base version, the slim version, the elite version, the arcade version, and then there was a special editions that would come out for a ton of big name games like Halo 3 and Modern Warfare 3. With all of the different Xboxes on the market, the 360 was a massive success, and Sony later employed that strategy with the PS4. You had the base PS4, the PS4 Slim, and then a few years later they changed the game with the PlayStation 4 Pro. But something interesting about how Sony has done things is the PS4 Slim basically became the default PS4 after a while. Since the original version of the console was so outdated and surpassed, more slim models were being sold than the original version, and that was despite the price difference. With the recent leaks, I'm starting to think Sony is going to do the exact same thing with the PS5. If history does indeed repeat itself, every 3 years after a new console generation, they're gonna release a slim model. According to a report by the leak.co, Sony is currently working on a PS5 Slim and are expecting to launch it in the Q3 of 2023. This would mean a brand new version of the PS5 will hit the market less than 3 years after the original's launch. Granted, this isn't particularly fast time by previous console generation standards, but that's the thing. This wasn't like any other console generations. The 2020 global situation created unforeseen hardware shortages, meaning the production times were even longer and most everywhere was out of stock almost immediately after launch. Periodic hardware drops weren't enough to fix the market issues, and to this day there are still millions of people who haven't been able to get their hands on a PS5 despite their best efforts. However, this report seems to claim that Sony is going to come back swinging with a brand new version of the console that's not only much cheaper, but it's also going to be easier for them to produce, meaning that this new version of the console will likely be much easier to get your hands on, similar to how the Xbox Series S has been so easy to buy the last couple of years. According to the article, Sony's new version of the hardware is being made with a technique known as die shrink, where they'll be able to run a new version of the PS5's hardware that's smaller, lighter, and less demanding to run, which will make it cooler and quieter. The stand is also reportedly being redesigned and possibly scrapped altogether in order to make the system more compact. This new version of the PS5 would be much cheaper to produce and much easier to ship, making it a great answer to the hardware shortages over the last few years, and finally Microsoft will have some solid competition in the budget console war. Obviously, they're not going to be able to compete with Nintendo with how much that console is currently crushing it, being a perfect hybrid console that people are loving. Now, as far as the release date, the leak claims that the PS5 Slim will likely go into production in Q2 of 2023 and officially launch in Q3. This will put it in gamers' hands right in time for the holidays, so not only will it make a great Christmas present, but it will also boost the sales of the PS5 games around the winter season. It's a little unclear what will happen to the base PS5 after the launch of the PS5 Slim, but I think it all depends on how well they make the budget system and how it does. If the PS5 Slim is technically weaker than the base version, it would make sense for Sony to continue production, but if the Slim variant ends up being more powerful system and it's cheaper to produce, I see no reason why Sony would want to continue producing the base version of the PS5 at all. In fact, I think this is why they're not going to call it the PS5 Slim at all, as it may end up being a total replacement for the console in general. So the PS5 Slim might not end up being an additional PS5 option on the market, but rather it's just going to be what the PS5 is going to look like and run like going forward, which could also do amazing things for sales charts. By getting more affordable and accessible PlayStation 5 consoles into stores, they'll greatly increase the number of people getting their hands on one and finally being able to experience the latest Sony machine. So how does this affect the reports of a PS5 Pro? Well, this report didn't mention anything about the Pro variant, but we do have some theories. There have been a number of leaks over the last few years regarding the Pro version of the PS5, and I absolutely believe they're true. However, I think this new version of the PS5 hardware is still a couple of years out, and I think the PS5 Slim is likely going to be a way for Sony to hold us over until the new machine is ready to come out. The existing PlayStation 5 models are really difficult to get and expensive for Sony to produce, but if they're able to get a new model out into the public, that could be an absolute game changer for them. It should be noted that the leak claims that the system has not officially been named yet, and despite being a smaller, quieter version of the PS5, they might not call it the PS5 Slim in general, which would be a little bit strange since the previous PlayStation consoles have had Slim variants. But my point is, with a new PlayStation on the market, Sony can begin introducing their own family of consoles, and after about a year of letting people upgrade to the PS5 Slim, or perhaps they're getting the Slim as the first option, meaning they've never had a PS5 before, that's when you could drop the PS5 Pro for $600 or so, creating a third option and getting a ton of people to double dip. I mean, if you bought a budget version of the PS5 before, well, you might as well upgrade to the beefier version, right? And if you bought the PS5 back when it came out, it probably is time to replace it with something a bit more future-proof, right? Dropping the PS5 Pro a year or two later than the PS5 Slim is an absolute genius idea, and I'm almost positive that this is what they're doing. I mean, it's the same strategy they've employed with the PS4 as well. The launch version got slimmer, quieter variant called the PS4 Slim, and then a few years later, the upgraded PS4 Pro hit the market for maximum double dipping. It's a fantastic plan, and I think if the rumors of the PS5 Slim are true, it pretty much confirms a PS5 Pro is going to happen in the future. It should be noted that I'm not familiar with these sources, so I don't know how reliable they are compared to other people we've reported on, but the website seems rather legitimate and the sources are more or less vetted. So while there is no solid screenshots or hard statements yet, the report certainly got me hyped for what Sony is up to, and hopefully they're going to get these new machines out soon so people can actually get a PlayStation 5. It's pretty wild to think that the fact that the PS5 launched all the way back in 2020 and there are still people who haven't gotten one simply because they couldn't get one in time for the right price. That's a completely new problem for this industry, but it's led to some really interesting solutions like budget consoles and game streaming. The industry is super creative, and I cannot wait to see what Sony has in store for their future PlayStation models. Like I said, if history does indeed repeat itself, get ready for a PS5 Slim next year and then a PS5 Pro later down the road. Either way, I am so glad that they're going to release a PS5 Slim because I'm ready to replace this router. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Are you going to buy a PS5 Slim, or are you going to wait for a PS5 Pro? Let me know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel with your notifications on, and don't forget to stay tuned to the channel for more video game leaks because this is the place to be. Thanks for watching. This has been West Nemo, and I will talk to you guys again soon.